saying putting it nicely, to be honest.
Well,
I mean, I was in Athens when Tubby was there, and it was exciting, man. I mean, that's honestly in 93 to 97 to 98, there wasn't a lot of football worth going on. So Toby had it rolling. It was fun. And, Hugh Durham took us to the Final Four way back when. But I mean, like I said, the bar is low for Georgia basketball, and we do expect something. I've always said that, and it's a little different now that NIL is taking place, but it's like, build to a season once every 4 years, build to a tournament team, build to a good year in the SEC is all that we could ever ask, and if it gets going, you get the right coach and the program wants to invest in something bigger, great. But for now, we just got to win some games. I don't want this to turn into something gnarly and bitching and moaning about Mike White's first year. And we've certainly had a lot to bitch and moan about in the last few years, but we got off to a good start. We're still 10-1 at home. But you just kind of wonder, with looking ahead at the schedule, what is in store for the Dogs. And it's tough. We got a game with Alabama. We've got another game with Tennessee. I believe we got a Kentucky game. So it's tough sledding.
Oh, dude, let me tell you about tough. I came in on this ride when the infamous Ken Rosemond took over as coach. I was probably in like the 6th or 7th grade. They hired him from North Carolina and Dean Smith, and boy, he was going to turn things around. And needless to say, he did not. And then we had, about the time, I guess it was the same year I started school there in the fall of 1974, the infamous Johnny Guthrie era. Guthrie turned out to be a much better recruiter than Ken Rosemond was, but he couldn't win. And like my first week in Athens, I somehow wandered my way down to the old Stegman Hall, which used to be where the student center is now. And I mean, it was just like a giant Quonset hut with 4 courts. Walk in there, didn't even realize they were having open gym, like 7 o'clock one night. And on court number 1, 3 parade All-Americans, Foster, Tony Flanagan, Jackie Dorsey, some guys coming back from the year before. They're all playing on court 1. I see Lucius Foster, who was All-State parade All-American from Savannah, 6'10" or 6'11", poke a ball loose on defense, snatched it up, leading the break, takes 1 step inside the free throw line, and wheelhouses a dunk, puts his arm in about up to his elbow. And I just thought, holy shit, this guy's my age. But they couldn't win. 2 years, 3 years, they felt, they got Walter Daniel was probably the last really good recruit out of Macon that Guthrie signed. So then they ran him, and Durham comes in, and all of a sudden Durham opens up the pipeline. He gets Wilkins, he gets Terry Fair, he gets the next year he gets Vern Fleming, who was awesome, and they got strung enough players together that they actually got to the Final Four, right? Even without Dominique. And everybody's thinking, man, we're on the way now. We're finally getting talented guys to come here. And then Jan Kemp happened, and it's all kind of been, swirling the train ever since. It's just
well, what I've always said is that there's enough talent in this area that Georgia doesn't have to, like I've said, the bar is low. I mean, we're not expecting a 5-star out of Atlanta to choose Georgia over Kentucky or Duke, but I mean, you can still build a program with 3 stars, and there's just a lot of talent here. I've never quite understood why we've been resigned. I mean, I know my Twitter's got a lot of Georgia basketball fans in it, so I don't think there's anybody that's totally resigned to losing, but it just seems like the acceptance of it is just what's kind of frustrating to me. And
well, I think we've all gotten numb to it over the years. Like, yeah, well, I saw something a few years ago that just made me shake my head. It was like the University of Kentucky has had more All-Americans from the state of Georgia than Georgia has, and by a pretty good margin. I mean, there are no, I can't remember. Well, I guess a couple of years ago, Wiggins, he was, the top guys from this state. It's not that we don't get all of them. You're never going to get all of them. We can't get any of them.
Any of them is right. I mean, and like, I don't know if this was Tom Crean's burner or if it was just somebody close to Tom Crean, but regardless, it was a Tom Crean stand that was in my comments since Saturday night, and making excuses, and his thing was Georgia basketball's been irrelevant for 40 years, and it's just it is what it is, and it's just like, I'm sorry, man, you had Anthony Edwards for a season, and that was a 7-11 SEC record. I mean, that's just not acceptable, and to your point is that, yeah, we can get one or two guys in here, and I'd like to think that the football program and the excitement around it might bring, somebody's on the fence where you want to go, is Auburn or Georgia. Heck, let's go where the football team's winning a national championship, and maybe I'm just being naive on that front, but maybe they want to go play for a coach that can get them in the NBA. But like it's been said, how can the department not get a winning coach in here? You look at Nate Oates, who was found, from the mid majors, and Bruce Pearl and Barnes at Tennessee were pulled out of veteran coaches pulled out of Power 5 teams, and it's just like, again, the bar is low. I just don't know why we can't get it going, and I'm not going to write this season off completely, because a couple of wins down the stretch, and this is a very positive year. I really do fear that, and I'm going to invite, hopefully Will Morrison has joined Dog Central and has been writing the write-ups for the Georgia basketball games and stuff like that. And I am curious what anybody thinks about Cario Oquendo. I mean, he played 12 minutes in a game where Terry Roberts was out, and I'm just wondering if this team is starting to sort of give up at all. So, and if anybody's got any thoughts on that. I do have some stats that, they're not great, but Georgia is, let me see here. Let's pull them up here. Georgia is 13th in field goal attempts per game in the SEC, 12th in 13th in field goals made, 12th in field goals attempts, a 39% field goal percentage, which is 12th in the SEC. And on and down, they do try a lot of 3-pointers. They're 5th in the league, and their percentage is pretty good at 32% SEC. But, again, they are 5th in 3-point percentage, but the teams behind them are, they're allowing the 6th best percentage in the SEC. And their defense is not, I thought defense is one thing we're supposed to improve on. They're allowing 44% field goal percentage, which is, 8th in the SEC, which 8th is on the bad side. You want to be first, it's not, descending or whatever. It took me a second when I was looking at these stats. So yeah, there's only, 4 teams that are allowing worse field goal percentage, and they are middle of the pack in 3-point percentage allowed. So it's just, there's just, kind of what I said in the title. It's like, we had a lot of promise. Expectations were low, but this season feels like it's slipping away from us. Will, can you jump in? I hope you'll. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Will, I haven't even got a chance to meet him, so I'm glad here he is. Will, thank you and welcome to Dog Central. And tell us what your thoughts are coming down the stretch of the basketball team season here. You there, Will? All right. What? Oh, I can see him muting and unmuting here. And Graham is supposed to jump in here shortly too. That I know everyone loves Graham. He's the hero of Dog Central and co-founder. And I'm trying to get him to find out if there's any intel on the Oquendo situation, because he has 2 of his last 22 attempts from 3-pointers. Again, he played 12 minutes last night in a game where our best player was out, and that's where you kind of want your your young phenom. And he's not a phenom. He's not highly recruited. He's an exciting player. He should be better than he is. But that's where we are. Anybody else would like to ask a question or chime in? I would love to hear what you guys have to say. I don't know if you guys watched the game last night, but Georgia was not competitive from the jump. They scored the first basket 2-0, and then it was quickly 10-2, and I think we scored to make it 15-8 at one point, but after that it was a double-digit deficit the entire game. You there, Will? I'm hearing somebody jump in there, but any rate, and if that's
for me personally, I think White's done a good job. I don't think, maybe because of my inner Munson and years of being disappointed, I didn't let the pretty good start fool me into thinking that, suddenly he just kind of turned it around. Durham, when you consider where we came from last year, there were a lot of things that had to be corrected. I mean, the roster is almost completely rebuilt. And it's, I guess, a truism to say good teams and good programs take time to build. We see a lot better effort, I think, and we've gotten some pretty good results, but this was never going to be Kirby coming in and taking a very solid base and getting them going. And even Kirby struggled in his first year in football a little bit. So I'm not disheartened by things getting a little rough here as the season moves along. I'm not convinced that White is going to be a guy that can have us in the top 10. But on the other hand, I mean, if Auburn can be a top 10 team, if Alabama can be a top 10 team, just like football, this is a fertile recruiting ground full of athletes. We're the flagship friggin' institution. North Carolina football and Georgia basketball are the two biggest mysteries in college sports to me, because there's no reason that both of them shouldn't be really good. They've got all the potential. It just, for whatever reason, they're just never quite able to put it together.
Yeah, I mean, you bring it, and you talked about, it's inevitable that we're going to compare this to football because, it is a football school. But I don't think you can't put anything on Mike White like what Kirby. There's just not the same resources there. I get.
Oh no, not at
you
all.
Were saying what I totally agree, and it's easy for me to go at. Well, I will say that I think thus far, I think the season has been a success. Where my concern is right now is that I can see it kind of folding on us, and whether it's Cario just kind of disappearing for some reason, I would like to see progression, even if it's not wins on the scoreboard, being competitive. And I'm going to throw out the Texas A&M loss last night. It was just, they're playing hot. They've got a lot on the table, but you just can't keep getting blown out. And, the Vanderbilt loss was, I don't know, it was a little concerning with allowing Vanderbilt to come into your building and score 83 points. And I would love to honestly, it's really, my concern is about Cario, because that's a building block that maybe we can have something going on next year. I don't know if Terry Roberts, who's a transfer and a senior, I don't know if he gets to play another season, but any rate, we need everybody every competent basketball player. Bridges is another veteran that really just kind of disappeared last night. And just, it felt like, I love watching Raheem shoot the rock. He's confident. He moves without the ball. He gets the ball and is confident. So I'm excited to see him, and I like to see him try to make as many 3-pointers as he's got, because we need something. So it's exciting. There's a lot there. I guess Cario is the biggest question mark, in my opinion. Graham, welcome. Graham just joined us, and hopefully will join us as well. It's a small little group here, as kind of symbolic of what Georgia basketball is. It's a small little fan base, but my ambitions for the season were, and once we got through football, is to really turn into basketball season and talk a lot of hoops. But interest is only so much. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I thought, Yeah, I mean, the way that the season started for Georgia, I thought we may actually have like a solid appetite for basketball content. But with every blowout loss, I feel like the group of people that are hungry to talk about Georgia b-ball is continuing to shrink. But I've been listening to what you were saying for the last few minutes, and I think on the whole, I agree with you. Like, if you had told me, or I think pretty much anybody, including Mike White and including Josh Brooks, the guy that hired him, like, if you'd said, hey, early February, Georgia will be 14-9, you know, or what are they? Is it 9 now or 8? It's 14-9. Yeah. 14-9, 5 games over 500, and we'll have, you know, more than doubled their win total from last year and still have, I believe, 8 games left. Like, we all would have taken that. We all would have seen that as tremendous progress for UGA basketball. But I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Josh, because like I do feel like it's not that they've lost the last few games or even about how much they've lost by, but I do feel like there has been just kind of a lack of cohesion or a lack of organization and a lot of bad shots being taken. Like, it's not that they're losing, it's more how they're losing that I think is a bit concerning, or maybe like signifies a little bit of a regression from what we saw earlier in the season.
Well, you know, you go to the game at Rupp and Georgia was leading at halftime and they shot lights out. I mean, and I did, even at halftime, as exciting as that game was, I was watching and I was like, there's just no way they can keep this up. They're gonna have to either depend on Kentucky not shooting well or really, really continue to play good defense. And they couldn't keep up that pace, and they got, you know, pretty much soundly beaten. And then to come back and lose to Vanderbilt, okay, there's a hangover there. And then, but again, the South Carolina game, okay, well, you know, that was a team that we were better than, but that pushed us at home on a Saturday night to our limits, and we had to win in overtime. And then all, you know, I keep saying there's a story and there's a narrative there to excuse all of it. Auburn was, you know, that was not going to go well. They were looking for blood and revenge, and they're one of the top, you know, 20 teams in the country by most standards. And so, and they needed that win. And then, you know, okay, A&M, sure, you know, on the road, back-to-back road games and against good teams, and you get blown out. And I guess my question is, it just seems like and that's kind of what I want to talk about. It just seems like we're kind of, there's no momentum. There's no building blocks that I feel like are happening right now. And I guess, you know, Graham and you and I were texting, and the Cario situation is just a head scratcher. And I mean, I'm a Cario fan. He was one of the highlights, one of the very few bright spots last year.
Yeah.
Well, no, once we got rid of Green, that was a highlight. But you know, I really wanted to see that kid, you know, okay, now's my time. Now I'm just curious. Is he not? I don't know if he's healthy. His minutes have declined each, you know, since he came out of the Kentucky game. His minutes have declined. He played 12 minutes last night.
Yeah.
And you know, Abdur Rahim is great. I mean, like there's pieces there that if you have a good night and those guys are on and they're fired up, they can beat some people, and that's what I want to see. I just want to see that. Let's push some teams. You know, like, the bar is low, but I just worry that they're going to still slip under it at the end of the year. And where does that leave us? But I have to also check myself. It's like, this is everything that's happening is still better than the best that ever happened under Tom Crean.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, I mean, I think, like, if you look at, I don't know if you or anyone that's listening to this ever listens to Split Zone Duo, which is a college football podcast with Stephen Godfrey, who's on that show. He has a term for like rebuild situations in college football. Like, certain programs are like a year zero, where, you know, the coach comes in and like basically the first year should be considered a free pass, and they're just trying to put some structure and organization and some culture in place. And I think, like, Georgia last year had, I'm pretty sure, like, at least from a winning percentage statistical standpoint, the worst ever basketball season by an SEC program in history. Like, not just, you know, the worst in Georgia history, like the worst that I could find. Like I don't think anyone in modern SEC play has ever only won 6 games and lost as many as Georgia did. So that is like the perspective that we should probably keep in all of this. But I'm with you, man. I do feel like the Quindo thing is odd. It's not just that he's only played 12 minutes last night, but the shot selection is really weird. Because, I mean, I think what makes him so dynamic and explosive is his athleticism and his ability to drive to the rim and, you know, do things when he gets there and make highlight plays. And like last night, he took 6 shots and 5 of them were 3-pointers, and he was 0 of 5. And I think it was you that said he was 2 of 22 on his last, you know, however, I guess his last 22 3-point shots. Like,
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand is Georgia's not a good 3-point shooting team. They're, you know, probably bottom 40% in the NCAA. And the last couple nights out, like, you know, against Auburn and then at A&M last night, they are shooting an inordinate amount of 3-pointers. And it's like, why, if that's not what you're good at, is that what seems to be the game plan? Because jacking up, you know, 30 something threes on a night when you're taking 54 shots is a bad recipe for Georgia. And they were shooting about 34% on the year from 3-point range, but I mean, I think it was 16% last night. Like it was abysmal.
Yeah, I mean, they got out and they were shooting them. I just don't think they have an offense without Roberts, and I think you know, that's really kind of all they had. So I didn't really fault it if they hit a reasonably decent amount of those. That's how we stay competitive.
Yeah,
and maybe if we start hitting from threes, it's something else opens up underneath. But you know, it clearly didn't happen. I still like seeing Raheem, and he shot. I think he had 18 points. You know, and who was
Hill.
Hill, sorry. Hill, you know, had 20 points. I mean, there was, and that's again going back to Cario. It's like, man, you got some role players that can step up in absence, but he sure as hell didn't. And
well, but it's like, why wasn't he on the floor? And I'm wondering if he's not hurt on some level, because like Roberts, you know, really hasn't looked the same since Kentucky, and then we come to find out, you know, that he got a concussion against Auburn. But I think he's been banged up in general, and I do think him and Quindo have had to carry so much of the load for Georgia just from like a ball handling and penetration standpoint, that maybe those guys are just worn down, or they're dealing with a nagging ankle or something. But I can't imagine that Mike White would tell Quindo, hey, like, you know, I want you to shoot 80% of your shots from behind the 3-point line tonight, because that's not who he is as a basketball player. That's not what makes him good. That's not really what he brings to the table. And maybe that is why he set last night, you know, maybe he is dinged up and it was like, hey, this game's out of reach. We're going to, you know, put some other guys out there and try and give them some experience and try and save you for a moment that's winnable. But it is odd. Whatever is going on it doesn't make sense from the outside looking in.
Well, I think I finally figured out how to get Will to speak again. Will Morrison has joined Dog Central. He's covering, doing the write-ups. I'd love to – we got some people in here, so we might go back on some stuff we've already talked about. But All School was my first man in the group chat. Old school, all school. Thank you. But let's keep it going. Will, welcome to Dog Central and welcome to the space. Tell us what your thoughts are on this season thus far.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. Like the title says, it was, you know, a promising start with that home win against Auburn. And, you know, then we kind of fell apart. And then that overtime win against South Carolina, I thought we were going to get things back on track. But, you know, now we've dropped the last 2 games in these horrible fashions, and hopefully we can figure it out.
Yeah, I think the games I have circled are certainly on the road at South Carolina would be a great way to end the regular season, and Ole Miss and LSU. I think those are teams that are comparable to us, and we got them at home. I believe both of those are at home. I know Ole Miss is, and I'd like to see them come out and win. Do you think that they can get that done, or are we at the bottom and there's going to be a rise up, or do you think this season might just crater?
Like I wrote in my piece that I posted on Dog Central last night, this team has shown flashes of being really good. And
totally agree.
When we're all hitting, I think we can compete with anybody, like we showed against Kentucky. I think not having Terry Roberts last night killed us. A big part of our offense is getting Terry to the basket and feeding to our big men. But without him, we just weren't able to do that last night. But I definitely think there's a way that this team can compete with those teams at the end of the road.
Graham, what do you think? Can you see us? I mean, you and I talk about all the time. We break down film. We try to refute narratives, or not refute them, but either just talk about them. But I think it just feels like we're in narrative land here, and we just kind of grasping at straws. What are your vibes? What are your vibes on the season going into this last little bit before the SEC tournament?
I think the encouraging thing I would say is, like, something changed in Georgia's season when they lost that game to Vanderbilt, and I think a lot of college sports, and I talked about this a lot after the national championship game in terms of giving kudos to Kirby, is that, like, a large part of the battle with this is, yes, like, you need talented players, but also just making them believe that the sum of the parts is greater than the individuals. And I think Mike White had done that for a lot of the year, and that Georgia was playing, a few levels probably over their heads in terms of the talent that's actually on the roster. And then the second half of Kentucky happened, and then, that I didn't think was super detrimental, but losing to Vanderbilt the next time out was, because that was, I think, the last place team in the conference at that point. And I don't know. They got to get back, whatever that little magic was, or that belief that they had in their ability to go and play. Because even against Vanderbilt in that game, they fell behind by a large margin, and they did what better teams do in college basketball and went on some runs in the second half, came back, almost won that game. When they played South Carolina at home, they were down, I believe, 13 in the second half, came back and won. So in that regard, I would say I do feel positive about Georgia's ability to, have a good shot at beating Vandy, USC, and Ole Miss, because when they've played all three of those teams already, and they have looked like the aggressor. They've looked like the better team on the floor against all three of them. But it's also is Terry Roberts healthy, I think, is the big question. And as cliche as this sounds, it's just like, yes, Georgia needs to hit shots, obviously, but I think the last couple times out, what's probably frustrating is that they don't seem to be doing the little things, like the fundamental things in terms of rebounding and defending, that they were early in the season. And I think that's kind of probably the most disheartening part about all of it, is, like, if they just had a bad night shooting and they lost, I think it would be easier to swallow. But, we saw Georgia earlier this year look really good in terms of doing the things that don't require talent. And the last couple of times out, they, have not looked as good in terms of doing those little things that are just kind of hustle plays. And so I wonder if there's a kind of some sort of morale issue, or some sort of, kind of locker room issue. And I mean, that's not me trying to throw stones at Mike White necessarily, but it's just, you inherited a lot of guys, and this team's glued together.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, he's got, if there are messages being sent with playing time, and he's got to have buy-in on what he's trying to do, and they're not buying in, then it's like, Mike White's the coach, and I trust in the Josh Brooks to hire the guy that can get us back to a respectable place. So yeah, I mean, if Cario's not buying in, that's fine. I'm not saying, again, I'm not trying to say Cario, there is something going on, but it just, I'm not an insider. I'm just honestly just a fan. But yeah, so if there's messages being sent, I'm here for it, and as long as, but again, Graham, unfortunately, we do not get Vanderbilt on the home stretch here. But we got Ole Miss coming up. Yeah, we have we have 3 straight home games with Ole Miss, Kentucky, and LSU. So 2 out of 3 of that would be fantastic. I mean, like fantastic. Like you're going to see me on Twitter. I would be over the moon. I mean, and those that I have circled are Ole Miss and LSU, who are a combined 2-18 in the league. So that's doable. That should be doable.
It should be. And I mean, you already beat Ole Miss on their floor. Yeah.
So and then after that, it's real tough. So if they don't get one, if they only get one of those, I kind of like going to be a little bummed out, because after that we go to Alabama, we go to Arkansas, and then we get Mizzou. Mizzou is a team that is really, really good. They were ranked 20th at one point, so they're going to be looking to boost their NCAA resume. And then you got Florida at home, which, I mean, you always want to beat Florida, and it's at home.
Mike White revenge game.
Mike White revenge game, yeah. Number 2, right? Well, I guess you're not revenging if you're playing your alma mater, and then at the end of the year, South Carolina. So that's the schedule right there that gives me reason to hope that there's something to build on. So
that's 8 games left that you just listed out, if I'm correct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we just broke over the halfway point on Saturday night.
I think in a perfect world, like, you would be absolutely thrilled to see them split those and come out with 18 wins.
Yeah, that'd be bonkers great. I mean, but again, that narrative, it just feels like, man, we need something positive. It's started out great. We had a good preseason run. We got the SEC schedule started off right, but it just feels like it's slipping through. And if we crater, I just don't know where we are. It's just it's a little concerning, and it's just year 1 of Mike White, and I know and everything is an improvement. But
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they went 0-8. I really wouldn't. I hope they don't, but like the way that they've played the last couple times out, it does make that feel like a possibility. I will say, though, that despite this recent swoon that they've been on, Georgia has still, I think, only lost 1 home game all year. I think they're 11-1 at home. And I mean, that is college basketball, right? Like, that's kind of the sign of a competent to decent college basketball team, is being able to hold serve on your home floor, and they have done that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I've got the LSU game and the Ole Miss game kind of circled, and those are coming up. You played well at home. And I mean, again, that's all also predicated on assuming we're going to be relatively healthy and that Roberts can play.
Yeah,
I think the goals change if Roberts is out for another game or 2 or extended or whatever. Graham, we've talked a lot about hoops, and I think, especially considering we're talking about Georgia hoops, we've stretched it out. If you guys have if you guys got any questions, jump in. But Graham, you got a little energy for a little update in some college football? We've already got a quarterback 1 question in the YouTube chat, which we don't have to start off with that. But Alabama hired some coordinators.
Yeah.
And let's give me some thought. You want to send a tweet out real fast where say, hey, we're talking football now. Maybe we can get some more people in here. But
sure.
Graham, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the hires of Kevin Steele and the dude from Notre Dame, Reese, right?
Yeah, I don't know that you can necessarily judge Tommy Reese off of Notre Dame's offensive output this year. I mean, if you're trying to kind of poke holes in that hire, it would be like, hey, I think they scored 16 points against Marshall or something like that. That's not good. But his quarterback was hurt. His slot receiver, there were some things that, even kind of going into the year, I think a lot of people looked at Notre Dame's offense and said this is going to be an uphill climb. I mean, they did do a really good job against South Carolina's defense in that bowl game win, and that was him as well. Young guy, though, I think it's going to be interesting. personally, like if I was a recruit or just myself, I guess, I don't see that as an upgrade over Bill O'Brien. I really don't. Like, I know that Bill O'Brien is an unlikable kind of figure because of his tenure with the Texans and all of that, but like he does have a history of getting a lot out of quarterbacks. Like, he made Christian Hackenberg look like a competent college quarterback, and then he never did again after O'Brien left. So, yeah, I don't think it's an upgrade.
Do you think it feels like to me he's sick of hiring coordinators, and maybe he wants a college guy that's actually going to stick around? That maybe there's
saw
some growth.
Him forcing O'Brien out this year. I mean, that was kind of the take from people that are more in the know on Alabama than I am, is that if you watched Alabama's offense,
because
everything looked so hard.
Yeah, well, also he's probably angling for an NFL job. Like, he probably, I'm sure they had a conversation of like, I want to get, if I go to the NFL calls, I'm coming. I mean, I don't. But that what I'm saying is, yeah, like it does feel like, to me, he's like, okay, well, this is not the slam dunk hire. This is not Kingsbury. This is not the Coach Saban rehabilitation facility.
Yeah,
maybe I'm going to get a guy that's actually going to be here for a few years.
Nick Saban happy ending halfway house.
I like that.
Yeah. No, for sure. I agree with that. Like, I mean, the question is also, how much longer is Saban going to be there? I guess the way that I look at this is like, I think Saban probably has 3 to 4 years left if you're being optimistic. And so I see these hires as like, all right, I'm building up this is who I'm going to be in the trenches with for like my final push, And I guess if I was hiring coordinators to make one more push and to go get, another ring and walk away on top, holding up the big, CFP trophy, then I wouldn't go hire Kevin Steele and Tommy Rees. I wouldn't, I mean, like, I don't think that's who the first choices were in either regard. I mean, we know that they wanted Schumann. Obviously, that wasn't ever going to happen. But yeah, I think if you're a Georgia fan,
all right.
Does this bring a threat? I don't think so.
Rewind that just a little bit. Schumann was never going to happen. Can you enlighten us a little bit if we haven't read everything you've written on Dog Central, because that is newsworthy as a Georgia fan?
Yeah, I mean, I just think you got to remember that Kirby plucked Schumann out of an analyst position that had zero on-field responsibility, and he was in his late 20s when Smart took the job at Georgia in December of 2015. Schumann was his first hire. Like, he was, he came with him on the airplane from Tuscaloosa to Athens, and I just think Schumann has a loyalty to Kirby that is similar to the loyalty that Kirby had to Nick once upon a time, right? Where it was just, I'm pretty sure that Kirby probably had the same conversation with Glenn that Saban had with Smart when he was offered the Georgia DC job a couple of years before Mark Richt got fired. And that was, why would you go and work for this guy and take this job as a coordinator that's a lateral move when you could just be hired as the head coach there in a couple of years? Schumann does have that Bama history, right? His dad played for Bear Bryant. He's obviously an alum of the school, but I think all along it was just a matter of, Georgia needs to take care of him from a salary standpoint and up his salary, which I believe has happened. I don't have numbers on it, but I'm sure we'll find out, in like 6 months when the Georgia FOIA request goes through. But yeah, I mean, I just, Alabama, I looked at it like this, man, this whole coordinator search for them on the defensive side and the offensive side, getting turned down by Grubb at Washington, is just like the juice that Saban once had in a coordinator search, where pretty much anyone in the country would say, hey, if I go work for him, I'm going to, if I stay for 2 years, I'm going to win one national title at least. And I'm probably going to go on and get a a head job somewhere shortly after. Like, I don't think that's the case anymore. That's not how it worked out for Pete Golding. That's not how it's worked out for, you know, a lot of the guys that have been coordinators there over the last half decade. So I don't think there's the allure of going to work for Nick that there once was. And he's still a notoriously hard person to work for. Like, he is as demanding of a coach as anyone when it comes to his assistants' time. And so maybe that, you know, that might have been worth it to everybody once upon a time, but now it's like, well, you mean I'm going to do all that and I still, you know, might not kind of end up where I want to? Why would I leave a good situation that I'm in already?
All right, I'm gonna ask one more question and invite some more. So if you got some questions for Graham or anything you want to talk about hoops or football, we'll take them. But Graham, 3 years at the end of 3 seasons from now, who is the OC, DC, and head coach of Alabama?
Ooh, 3 seasons from now.
Okay, how about that? How many of these guys are still here after three seasons from now? Let's just say that.
None of them. Maybe Nick. Maybe Nick. If they don't win a title, if they don't win a title, then Nick is still there. If they win a title, then none of them are still there. As far as who's the next head coach at Alabama going to be, man, that's a tough one. I'll throw one out for you, just for shits and giggles. Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning stays at Oregon, goes to Alabama in like 2026 or 27, and he's the new head coach.
All right. Tweet it, guys. You heard it here.
You heard it here first.
on the Georgia basketball spaces with 15 people here. Guys, thank you for joining. One last chance. If anybody wants to ask Graham a question, ask me a question. I'd like to again. Anything. It's open mic night here at Dog Central. Really appreciate you guys joining us. We're just trying to keep the content and community going through what's kind of a disappointing basketball season until we get to G-Day, which was always my joke with Seth Emerson. I always kept saying when Georgia would have a bad loss, I'd be like, when is G-Day? I haven't tweeted that out yet. I have not tweeted when is G-Day. So I'm hanging on, but at any rate, the Hoops family is small and tight, especially on Twitter. And I was hoping to get Hoops Mafia and some of the Fletcher and some of those guys in here, but Sunday night might be a tough night to get those guys in here. And if anybody's got any questions, send out a request. Otherwise, I will thank you guys and let you guys get in on your Sunday evening.
Did we have anything from the YouTube chat?
No. You know, if you want to ask a quarterback one question right now, you can, but I think we can probably save that from Visor.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Carson Beck's got the inside track, but I guess the only interesting take I would have on it is that I think the quarterback battle is much more between Carson Beck and Gunnar Stockton than it is between Carson Beck and Brock Vandagriff. I would not be actually at this point. I think I might be surprised if Vandagriff is still on Georgia's roster come opening day of the 2023 season, and that's not just that's not really like any knock on him. I guess it's just I think that he could play at other schools, and he might want to do that.
All right. Well, since nobody's gonna ask you a question, I'll ask you a question. When does Deuce update us on the Deuce? Deuce Robinson, actually, when is he going to decide?
I don't think he even knows. I mean, it sounds like at this point, he's such a good player that anywhere he wants to play is going to have a scholarship for him, right? I think that at this point he is waiting for the Major League Baseball draft to occur because he has said that he is 100% playing college football, but that he wants to see where he's drafted and who he's drafted by, and maybe work out an agreement where they still want to sign him with the understanding that he's going to go play college football for at least 3 years and that could be his future. And so it's one of those things where if he gets drafted in the first round and somebody's offering him a $4 million signing bonus, then he wants to wait and see if that's going to happen, because my understanding is that he cannot sign that signing bonus and be on scholarship at the same time. Like, I think that he would have to walk on, from a numbers standpoint at the football program if he signs the pro baseball contract. So I think that is really it's really just a money play for him. Of I don't want to sign this national letter of intent kind of thing, and then not negotiate on the baseball side.
Yeah. I think that'll be an interesting thing. I think he's playing it, he's being getting good advice on how to handle all this.
He's doing exactly what you would tell your kid to do if they were in the same situation.
We've got a question in the YouTube chat. Z1993's got one, but before we get to that, I do want to hype up what Jason has written on the site in terms of the breakdown of the signing class. It's easy to forget, we have early signing day, but we just had the signing day this week. The class is pretty well finalized, but it's just got such a good detail. It's not really long, but it's got a ton of information. So check out on Dog Central the signing day recap that he wrote. Z is asking, give us some O-line news in terms of, he wants to know who the O-line is, but we kind of know who the returners are, but maybe some of the young guys we need to watch in spring practice. And also Z wants to know who our starting wide receivers are, which I can tell you, we don't know anything until Ra-Ra's situation becomes a little more clear.
Yeah.
Graham, O-line stuff. When you got any O-line insight you can share with us before we get out of here?
I mean, we know that Mims is going to be, one of the tackles. I would not be surprised if he is flipped over to left tackle, just to protect that blind side for whoever the quarterback ends up being. And then I believe that, we know we'll see Van Pran at center again. Truss will be back as guard. And then, so that kind of leaves the, one tackle position and one guard position open. I think Ernest Green probably has the inside track on that tackle spot so far. He was recruited as a guard, but they moved him to tackle last fall. And he was running, he was taking first team reps at time. He was pretty solidly, I think, the third tackle on the team, or the fourth tackle on the team behind Jones and Mims and McClendon before he got hurt going into last season. So I would watch out for him. And then at guard, that's going to be interesting. Micah Morris could be into that battle. Blasky, Jared Wilson, maybe. Like, I think that's going to be the one where you probably see the most competition. And the luxury for Georgia with the schedule that they have to start the season is that they can take their time figuring it out and put, a lot of different rotations on the field and aren't going to be at risk of losing any games because of it. So I think that will go on probably into the fall, barring someone really just like taking a big leap this offseason.
The wide receivers, I think, is probably going to be the most talked about position group, one of the most talked about positions group, just because there's so much with hopefully Ra-Ra will get that situation cleared up and will be a Georgia Bulldog. But if not, even it's Dominic Lovett, who is, I think had him as the third highest recruit or valuable recruit in the portal. And he is the real deal, right?
Oh, yeah.
Don't you think that? And then of course McConkey coming back, and I don't think you can have a pass catcher conversation without talking about Bowers. So
right.
It's fun to talk about, but what are any thoughts on the wide receivers for Z?
Yeah, obviously you're going to have the transfer guys. We don't know Thomas's situation, like you said. So if he's on the team and is able to participate fully, then I would expect him to be your starting X receiver. If he's not, then I think we know, like, you're going to see McConkey and Lovett probably flip-flopping at Z, or both of them playing some snaps in the slot. But I expect them to both of them have played a lot of outside in their careers, even though people look at them as smaller guys and assume they're slot receivers. They're not. I don't forget about Rosemy. I mean, his blocking is good, and he is very good on some of those longer developing crossing routes. Like, he knows where to sit down in the zone. So I think he'll be part of that equation as well if you don't have Thomas there. He was the starting X receiver for the vast majority of 2022 with AD out. So that would be I think Georgia's receiving room is pretty stacked, though, man. I mean, it really is. There's a lot of good players in that group, and I think that you're going to see a lot of rotations and those guys staying fresh, and it'll be kind of interesting to monitor throughout the year, because what you and I are going to be trying to figure out is, like, okay, when it comes time for better opponents, who really are the 3 or 4 guys that you expect on the field, and Delp as well, man, because Delp runs routes like a receiver. I think Delp could be like a Jake Bobo style player, the kid from UCLA this past season. Like, he's a better route runner than Brock is, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting.
Going off your O-line talk there, Graham, so do you think Tate Ratledge is going to lose his starting job?
Oh, I forgot about Ratledge entirely. No, I don't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know what? Trust graduated, didn't he?
I'm not entirely sure.
I think I got him. I think he's back though.
I don't think he's gone, but I'm not 100% sure.
I think he's back. I think I counted him in there, and it's one of those situations where he might have been draft eligible, but
it looks like. Wait a second. No, you're right. Okay, so yeah, I think you would see Truss and Ratledge as the guys with the inside track on there. That'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. Ratledge finally got healthy at the end of the year, and he was a monster. He kind of struggled, and I think that's why you saw so much rotation. But I don't know. I think Truss is a good offensive lineman. I don't think he's a great offensive lineman. So I do think there is a universe where a younger guy could come along and kind of challenge him for that spot, much in the same way where you saw Warren Erickson go from being starting guard in 2021 to more of a reserve player in 2022.
Shout out to Shag, who in the comments said, "Yeah, Truss is returning," which we figured out. Thank you. Yeah, I like that. He might be a little bit of a Swiss Army knife there.
Yeah.
For the O-line there. I'd like to Tate's the man, I think.
For sure.
And that's a good catch, Will. Good question there. Yes. We'll have lots and lots of football talk.
Yeah.
coming up this spring. Z, thank you for the comments in the YouTube chat. It was a little quieter tonight, but we do take questions. If you don't want to join the space, you can join us on YouTube, which we appreciate. Anybody we're going to be doing these with some of the other guys on Dog Central. Welcome to Dog Central, Will Morrison. Please make sure you see him in the space there. Go hit that follow, because he's putting out stuff on the site, and we appreciate it, and he's worth the follow.
Glad to be here.
Graham. Yes, sir. Graham, anything else before we get out of here?
No, sir. Thanks for putting this together. It was a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, thank you, Graham, for joining us. And if you missed it, you can check it out on YouTube and give us some more feedback and tell us what you guys want to talk about, because we'll do this again, and we want to harder. Thank you, guys.